married later in life, which means those first several years of teaching, I had time and I had expendable funds. And so I invested in my own professional development, took courses, took workshops, took graduate credit, those kinds of things, and really worked hard to get better with technology because I knew what the administration thought I could do, and I was trying to disguise that. Getting my way through it. In the late 90s, when I was ready to look at a doctorate degree, I realized, you know what? The journey that I've been on in the past, 5 to 8 years to integrate technology, very few people will get to do it the way I did. Because most people, most teachers have families and have responsibilities, and it fell just right for me where I could spend my time the way I wanted to. And so as a result, when I started doing my doctoral work and researching things, I really wanted to focus on technology integration. And the way I see it, and I'm glad Steve pointed it out, is I think there are two different things to look at. I think we want to look at how we effectively integrate technology in teaching, and then we also want to look at how we effectively integrate it with learning. And by my mind, those are two very different processes. And they can be interwoven, and most of the time we want them to be. But they don't necessarily always, they aren't always the same thing. And so we'll talk about some of that today as we dive into this. The workshop that you're in right now, if you want to just write down this one web address, it'll take you to all the resources and more that I'm about to share with you. And this is bit.ly, bit.ly. .ly means Libya. I'm sure you've noticed web addresses that ended in co.uk for Britain, AU for Australia. Well, this is LY for Libya. And then it's my last name and 123. And so that will redirect you to a really terribly long, awful URL. And this is just easier to give out. Because the true URL has capital letters and plus signs, and it just is a bad web address. So you can write that down. And just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, this is what you'll find there. And so at the top are the slides, and the exact same slide deck I'm about to use. All the links in here will be clickable, and so you can click on them and go to the sites, and then all my notes and other things down here. So I always try to make my presentations, a lot of times we talk about technology, people want to write down every word. I want to say every word's there, just relax and try to absorb it and join in on a conversation. So you can access all of this again in a moment. And if you walk out of here hearing only one thing, I want it to be this. And it might sound contradictory to why I was brought in. As someone who makes a living in instructional design and technology, specifically in K-12 ed tech, I always want to emphasize to people, it's not about the technology, it's about learning. And as a 5th grade teacher, one of the big, huge chunks of my math curriculum was to make sure that they mastered everything about long division. And it wasn't their favorite thing to do, probably wasn't my favorite thing to teach. But to this day, I've yet to find technology that does a better job of teaching long division as compared to paper and pencil and the board. And so I always tell people, you use the best strategy, the strategy that fits your personality, because that plays an important role in teaching and learning. But also you use the best strategy for the students that are in the room that particular period and that particular semester. And so even though I'm about to talk about technology the rest of the time, please don't walk out of here misunderstanding me. I don't think it's necessary to use technology in every lesson, in every class period, and on and on and on. All right, so what we do want, instead of focusing on technology and using technology for the sake of using it, we want higher order thinking. And we want to encourage students to use 21st century skills. I'll talk a lot more about that this afternoon in the other workshop. But higher order thinking, for those of you that aren't from education and ed psych, you may not be as familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. But this is Bloom's taxonomy here, the original. He worked with, oh my goodness. Anyway, he had 2 graduate assistants that worked with him when he did this about 60 years ago. And the 2 of them revised it about less than 10 years ago. They revised it with new verbs because, you know, analysis and synthesis, those aren't necessarily straightforward for us, and so in this day and age. And so they just, it's the same categorization, but with verbs that kind of match where we are in these modern times. And you can see that the ability to create something is now considered to be the highest level of understanding. What's really great about that is you can create all kinds of stuff with technology. And you kids can be creative verbally, or through dance, and capture it on video, or through artwork, or through photos. And so we'll be looking at some of that throughout the day. We're at a really interesting time in education. We talked about this a little bit this morning. I had breakfast with the directors from the teaching center. And we're in a transition where we're going from the traditional classroom, and we've got students that are really quite digital. And, you know, we talk about digital natives. Some of us are digital immigrants. We've migrated into technology, and some of them were born into technology. My wife and I have 3 kids. The oldest is 10, so you can imagine just how digital they are. And, you know, they're thrilled that their dad has the job he does, because the new iPad, I will have one real shortly because it's part of my job. And, you know, iPod touches, and they get all the hand-me-downs. So they definitely, if it doesn't have a barcode, y'all know what I mean. You know. When I retire, I will bring a big box and say, I've been honest, here it is, but you never asked for it back. Y'all know what I mean.
It's amazing everybody knows what you mean.
What's happening on our campus is you don't barcode anything less than a price point, and technology's gotten so cheap they won't barcode it. I'm like, you don't understand what a nightmare it is for people in our department. We have technology coming out our ears. We want it barcoded. Because there's definitely been an invoice, and someday somebody's going to wake up and want to see that stuff. But anyway, back to the transition. It's a really important time. And that's why centers like this are really a valuable component of universities, I think, as they look forward at their future, but also the mission of the university. And I think it's important that we as faculty be aware of the transition and make measured decisions. I don't think, and this is what I was telling the group at breakfast, I don't necessarily think we all, as faculty, need to be making the same decisions. I don't, at this point in time, I'm not going to advocate we all move online. But I think we all need to be in the know and know what's going on and let that inform our decisions. If you're going to continue to meet weekly face-to-face, I still think you need to know about technologies, ways to telecollaborate in between sessions, and those kinds of things. So I think it's great that you've got a group, the group of you have shown up today. Before we dive in and talk about the transition, I want to talk about some of the activities that you do currently that are traditional, that you do in the physical classroom that don't make use of technology. Anyone?
Giving quizzes.
Okay.
Tests.
Like where you read out the
pencil.
question? Or
Paper pencil.
Working on case studies, case scenarios.
Good.
I draw a lot of models on the board.
I have
the skeleton model and I hold up a bone. Role play.
So you teach in the law school, I guess. Role playing. Okay. Other things that you do?
Lecture, question, answer,
Just discussions?
discussions.
Take a computer apart.
Taking the computer apart. Wow.
Networking.
Do you put it back together?
Well, hopefully. I take it apart and they put it back together. That's their thing.
What else do we do in the traditional? What are some other traditional strategies?
Brainstorming.
Brainstorming?
Group activities. Group activities.
Oh, I've got three at the same time.
Group activities.
Group activities, does one come to mind?
Well, I have them, everybody write one paragraph in a group of 5 and then put it together and make a complete essay.
Very good. Very good. Do you model any writing process with it, or is it more about the thought and less about the writing?
It's got organization, content.
Okay. What college are you from?
Here, UALR.
No, content
Rhetoric and
area.
writing.
Pardon?
With rhetoric and writing.
Okay, rhetoric and writing, thank you. And over here I heard something.
I
recommend on the technology, we all turn our cell phones to buzz.
Everybody's ringtone.
Yes, ma'am.
I have the student. I do this in the beginning of the semester. Icebreakers. I have them cut and paste. They do. They introduce themselves, doing cut and paste and making a poster, and then we play with toys.
Then you play with.
I give them a big, like it's. Anybody know what tubers and zots are?
Mm-hmm.
The kids' toy, and it's. They have to build a tower with it. If it's a group, it's a kind of a team building thing at the beginning of the semester. See how it works.
What's the toy called?
Tubers and zots.
No, I can't believe you 3 kids that don't know what that is. Is it like Connects kind of thing?
No, not really. Actually, it's like miniature pool noodles. You know,
Okay.
the noodles you put in a pool. It's like miniature ones of those, and then the zots are the connectors that put them together.
Interesting.
Oh,
All right.
yeah, well, go get some.
Well, and the thing I want to say, and I think this is important, is those continue to be really effective strategies for teaching. And I'm not here to advocate that we do away with those and we replace them. Right? And in fact, as I think through this transition, I hope I'm going to help you understand that that transition isn't nearly the leap that most people think it is. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. And there's green text right here that you can't see that says, I think it's really important when we do all these activities that we think about the learner. And you're going to hear that a lot today. But I think that's one of the things. I'm just a student-centered person. And I sit in faculty meetings all the time, and they know when I raise my hand, I'm probably about to say, I'm not sure we're making our decision based on the students. You know, it's easier for us to teach at 11 o'clock because we don't want to get out of bed and be here at 8 a.m. That's not necessarily what's best for the students. So I'm just a big believer that they're our customers and we need to think about them. This afternoon, no, it's in this workshop. I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit. So what I like to do is talk about the traditional approaches. You just gave me a slew. If you look at the document that was just handed out to you, there are even more traditional approaches. These are things most of us will be familiar with because we've experienced them probably as students, and I'm guessing many of us will be using them in our own classrooms. So, let me pull it up. So what I've compiled here, and I got the idea for this table from Andrew Churches. Andrew teaches in New Zealand. He's like the director of technology for, I think, about kindergarten through 3rd grade for a school district in New Zealand. And I read his blog frequently and use his resources. And several years ago, he came out with a table somewhat like this. But he realized that he'd been in the job for 3 years, and he was trying to encourage teachers that were really reluctant to begin to integrate technology into their classrooms. And we're not even talking about moving online, but just really reluctant to integrate technology at all. And Andrew was always saying that you don't have to redo your lesson plans, you just need to do the digital equivalent. Take the same lesson plans and do the digital equivalent. And he said after 3 years, one of the teachers finally felt comfortable going, "We believe you, Andrew. We're just not the tech geeks you are, the tech geek you are, and we don't know what that means and how to do it." And a light bulb went off for him, and it did for me when I read his blog and saw this. I was like, we need to be practical. And so what we both have tried to do is come up with the table. His is very different, a very different topic. But I've taken the traditional approach, and you can look down this column, and I think it's 3 pages, of things that you might do in the physical classroom. So for instance, if you do lecture in your physical classroom, the digital equivalent, the digital alternative, would be to use things like digital audio, podcasting. You could even do some digital video. People don't know it, but you can actually record straight to YouTube. Doesn't require any editing, nothing, no extra software. You just need a webcam and a laptop, and you log into YouTube and push record. You talk, and you push stop, and you're done. But if you want to hold up, if Steve wants to hold up some paper and do his chart and show his concept map, he can still do that in front of a webcam. And so it becomes a way to do the digital equivalent of the lesson plan you've been doing all these years anyway. And then the third thing that I've tried to do here in this column is provide you with technology to help you do that. And I'm a big proponent for free resources and open source software. So you'll find that most of the things are italicized, and anything in italics, as it says, means it's free. UM Podcast Central, that's something we have on the University of Memphis, so he won't have access to that. But we have a streaming server for all of our podcasting. Right? So if you do presentations, which so many of us do have PowerPoints and things like that, or some of you still may have the transparencies and you're using the overhead projector, well, this is the way that you, without really making huge changes to your lesson plans, you can move in and do the digital equivalent. And so you can use things, you can see these tools here, and then here are the free resources that would help you accomplish just that.
Cliff?
Yes, sir.
I just discovered that the second page is on the first page. If you flip it over, I thought at first we were missing a page. It's here.
It's on the back.
Here's page 2, if that helps you.
Yeah, it's in the
This
back.
one's page 2. And this afternoon, I'll show you examples of these tools and of them being used. I'll show you a few in a moment, but you'll see more really explicit examples later this afternoon. Another one that it took me a while to figure out, but doing guest speakers and doing interviews now with things like Skype, a service called WeToku, W-E-T-O-K-U. It's from Asia, so I don't know what the word means, but that's the name of it, WeToku.com. And other services, I've actually now found that it's much easier to get guest speakers into the classroom because they don't have to drive to campus and work out their work schedules. They just need to find a quiet place in their office and do it. Sit down and talk to us. Also, with the digital media, I can record it so they don't have to do it live, or they can do it live the first time and I'll record it, and then I don't have to bug them the next semester. I can just push play and we can watch it again. And so those are some really fantastic things. Ustream's another one. I wish I'd mentioned that to begin with. Ustream and Skype and WeToku are 3 really good ones for that. All right, so I'm going to show you some examples in just a moment, but any thoughts or questions as you look through the table? No one?
What does University of Memphis use for their learning management system?
We use Desire to Learn. We used to use WebCT. In our last contract negotiation, we went with Desire to Learn. We're their first major contract. They're out of Canada. We're their first major contract, and there's an upside and a downside to that. So we have their attention when we want it, but everything we do, it's the first time they do it. So, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, of course, we have Blackboard, and also connected to that is Wimba.
Right.
And we can use that for a lot of things like the guest speaker. As soon as I finish here, we're working out the details. We're having a guest speaker from Chile visit my online class.
Very good.
It's a little tricky, but we're trying to do that. And another thing that we do on Wimba Live Classroom is the like surveys and polls. They have a little tool in there that you can do that in Live Classroom.
Right. I like Wimba a lot. When I was at Georgia as a student and I even taught there, we had access to it. And through a variety of contacts, and sometimes I do consulting and trade favors with companies, every once in a while I can use Wimba in my classroom at the University of Memphis, and it really is nice. Adobe Connect's another one. I'm being recorded, so I'm not going to tell you, it's really expensive. I didn't say that. Adobe Connect's really nice. I'll tell you a platform I really like. It's from the Open University in England, and it's a free platform, and it's called Flash Meeting. And Google it because it has a UK extension, so I don't know the rest of it, but just Google it. It's one word, Flash Meeting. And what's really nice, in addition to being open source and free and all that, I like it because whoever has the floor has the option of you sharing their webcam and their audio, and they'll be, get prime real estate. But everyone else has the ability to share video and audio, and that's two different questions, so you don't have to share video, just audio if you prefer. And then there's text, but you can see everybody as a thumbnail. If they're sharing their video, you can see them down there. So if someone's talking, you can see heads going, yes, or you can see faces going, no, that's awful, we disagree. Which really, it adds a layer of richness to any kind of classroom discussion. So that's Flash Meeting. Any other thoughts about the table? All right, well then, Steve had asked me, we talked about showing some examples of trying to use some of these media in a classroom. And I'm going to show you some small things that I've done that have a really big impact, but really aren't that difficult. The first one is, in most of my classes...
I'm Clif Mims, and I want to welcome you to our class. I'm looking forward to working with.
All right, and so that's 13 seconds long, 12 seconds long, and I recorded straight to video. That's me sitting in my university office. I just take that and get the embed code from the YouTube video, and I embed it everywhere. What I did think about was I don't ever say what course it is, and so I can use the same video across all courses without having to shoot them. And I raised it. I'm wearing long sleeves that day, but you can't tell. And so I tried to, kind of be all-purpose season-wise. And the few students, that do take me for multiple classes, I thought of that. And so in some of our majors courses, I use Glogster. I have a Glog. If you're familiar with Glogster, it's a great, and I'm going to talk about it more specifically this afternoon, but it's a mashup tool. Mashup means you can take all kinds of media and put them together. And there aren't that many mashup tools at the moment, but that's what Web 3.0 is. If you're just catching on to Web 2.0, guess what? Web 3.0 is here and been here for several years. But Glogster is a great tool, and so what I've done on there is I've compiled several things. Most of this information used to be the PowerPoint that I gave on the first night of class. It said, "Hi, my name's Clif Mims. You know, welcome to class." And then I would show a picture of my family. And so I just took that picture and moved it there. And if they click on it, you know, it goes big. I used to tell them these things about me, but now I've made a Wordle, and so, you know, are most of you familiar with Wordle? It's really gained traction in recent years. Wordle, I like to tell people, Wordle isn't even a mom and pop deal. It was just a college kid by himself did this. And continues to do it, and he doesn't make money off of it or anything. Christmas before last, he got scared to death when Microsoft sent him a desist order claiming copyright infringement because Microsoft Word was part of his name. But educators, luckily he tweeted his circumstances, and educators from around the country came to his rescue, and a law firm down in San Diego came, and, you know, it wasn't, apparently it didn't take much of anything to get Microsoft to back down, but, you know, he's a college kid, and so he was about to shut down his server and everything. So, interesting story there. So if you ever get a chance to, in my line of work, I've frequently emailed these companies and say, it'd be great if you could do this because it would help teachers in these ways. And he's a kid, and once I found that out, I was like, goodness gracious, he's been really pretty professional in all my interactions with him through email. And then I just took screenshots of my websites and things so that they could learn a little bit more about me and, you know, what it is that I do. So this is an alternative way to introduce myself in the class, but you can see the same video is embedded there on this particular blog. Are you all familiar with Glogster? We are with Wordle, but not Glogster.
Is it free?
Glogster is free, and there's Glogster.com and there's Glogster.com/edu, and it's for teachers and classes. You know, for professors, it's not necessarily as important that you use the edu. For K-12, it is. But on the edu side, things are filtered more carefully, and that's something that, you know, I'm concerned about. Even though I teach adults, I prefer not to be in any kind of way connected to things that are inappropriate, even if it's second or third hand. So that's another way, and it's just embedded into my course content. This is nothing fancy, but this is the way. We don't really have much choice in our management system. You just, you know, module 1, and you just start clicking things, and you go down the page, and that's how they do it. So when they click on this welcome page in this particular class, that's when they just see the YouTube video of me saying, "Hey, welcome." Another thing that I do, we were talking this morning about interaction. I can't show you the student responses because of FERPA, and since this is my field, I know better, so I'm not going to do it. The student responses are hidden, but there were 68 responses, I think. But the first activity they do is they work through, my first module is the Getting Acquainted module in all of my classes, and they get participation points for doing it, and I give them a week's time. But I make sure in there that they have to use all the different components. Like they have to upload something to the Dropbox. They have to post the discussion board so that later in the semester, when real projects are late, they can't say, "I didn't understand." You know, I can go, "Well, you understood in the Unit 1 because you did it successfully," so I find that, you know, a little bit hard to believe. But in this module, I always ask these questions. And I don't think the particular questions are necessarily important. It's just the idea of them getting acquainted with each other. And in fact, for me, getting to know them better. We do some service courses which are outside our major. You know, we help all of teacher ed prepare teachers to integrate technology. So every semester we have about 500 students that aren't our majors take our courses, and so we certainly don't know them firsthand. So these kinds of activities help with that. Another thing that we can do through our system is they can set up their profile. So when they log in, I think WebC or Blackboard still does this. You know, you've got your photo up in the top left corner and some links there. In our management system, they can customize that. Somewhat like Facebook, but not nearly as much information. And so I make it, we don't make a big deal on our campus, so most students don't even realize it. So in my courses, I tell them, if you want to, because it does ask them for what city they live in and things like that, and I'm not going to require that they share that information. But if you want to, this is how you can go and fill out part or all of your profile. But again, it's just another way to build community and help them become acquainted with each other. And then in this course, this is the module 1. So we finished the Getting Acquainted module. This would be module 1. And this is actually the first course that our majors take in our master's and doctoral program. So they take it their first semester. And so I'm the son of a contractor, so I use that analogy and say we're going to lay a foundation in this first module. And the first module really, it takes several weeks because we've got to talk about learning theory and we have to talk about graphic design principles and a variety of things. But I also talk about this course is laying a foundation throughout this degree. So as you work with us for the next several years to earn your master's or doctorate, you know, this is a survey course. So we're going to dive into everything, but it's going to be kind of thin and shallow. But that's by design, and so don't be bothered that you feel like I don't know learning theory inside and out, because you're going to build on it later. And I'm actually, you know, at points I'm explicit and tell them, you know, in this course right here, and next semester you're going to pick up, and just to give them an idea, because this is the kind of conversation we used to have face-to-face the week before classes started, but we've moved online, and so that information is still important. And so I've tried to integrate it into this first course. But choosing images, and this is something if we continue to collaborate in the future, Steve, there's actually an entire science to, well, an art as well, to choosing your graphics carefully because they can convey meaning. And that's something that I always enjoy helping teachers do a better job of. Because of my work with church and Christian camps and things like that, I frequently get to talk to preachers about PowerPoint presentations, and they usually go, I'm awful with my PowerPoints. I didn't know it because they put so much information and it's all text and not enough images. But I find that it can be true of us as academics. I certainly have PowerPoints from several years ago that I'd be embarrassed to let you see now. It's something we've all learned. But then here's where I think I consider this to be really rich, this particular lesson, to use a lot of rich media, but all it is 3 YouTube videos that I've embedded there. But the idea is, you know, once you've read this information about learning theory in our book, and, you know, I tell them again, in this course we will concentrate on, to remind them we're only going this deep. So this is what you need to understand when you finish reading all this. Because those of you that have to deal with learning theory, you know, at some point you begin splitting hairs, in my opinion. Not all academics will admit that, but in my opinion, you start splitting hairs. So I tell them we're going to talk in this course in broad, sweeping terms, and the differences between the learning theories will be obvious at the level we're talking, and try to get them to relax about that. But then, here's B.F. Skinner, actually, it's not Pavlov's dog here, it's the chicken, but really glad that I ran across that. But you can see these other videos, and because they're on YouTube, I can just embed them, and because they're on YouTube, the copyright, if there's any infringement, it's not my problem.
Nice.
And I don't mean to sound passé about that, because I'm very careful about copyright infringement, because I'm supposed to know better, so I want to model it. But, at this point in time, YouTube will let me, they're the conduit, and I get to embed it, but it resides on their server, on somebody else's account. There are some things, I have chosen not to do some things because it was, in education, we do get, there's a gray area, we get some leeway, because for educational purposes, we're not trying to make money, if we show good faith effort of trying to say it belongs to somebody else, we get away with it. There's some things on YouTube, it's just clear people are breaking copyright. Because, they turned it on the projector and they sat there and recorded it off the projector, and that's, at least here I can say, I thought they owned the VCR tape, I thought that they owned a license for it. And every once in a while, that's not the case. I went to the movie last night, and saw the King's Speech, and I thought a guy was recording it. I was really getting upset and thought I was going to have to go tell on him. But then I realized he kept moving his thumb up, and then finally I was like, he's reading email, he's bored. And it turned out he didn't stay through the whole film, so I felt better. But I thought, yeah, I can't sit here and let him record this film and go bootleg. One other thing that I like to mention is, I think it's important that we as teachers look at how technology can be integrated, but I think it's more important, and it's probably easier, if we become open-minded and think about the ways that students can submit projects through multiple representations. I don't think that everything needs to be paper and pencil based. That's my personal belief about teaching and learning. Now, that's not to say I do teach research courses, and at this point in time, you're going to have to write research papers, etc. But this example here is a reflection. And so, we have students read content, and they've read an entire chapter from the textbook, and they've looked through some other resources up here, and I've tried to come up with activities or maybe a multiple choice quiz or a variety of things where I could understand what it is they learned. This particular topic's pretty broad. I just want to know, what are you thinking? Are you reflecting on this? I don't care what you focus on. You're a grad student, so I don't care which of these many components spark interest with you. I just want to know that you've spent some time with the material. So to this point in time, I just have them do a reflection. But I talk about in here that the reflection should demonstrate critical thinking. I even link to Bloom's levels in Wikipedia and talk about, it's everything above knowledge and comprehension. If you give me a summary, that's not going to work. Okay? You've made it to grad school, I assume you can summarize most anything. That doesn't tell me anything. And so you can see right here, this is not an opportunity to summarize. But then this is what is really fun for me, and eventually for them. The only limitation on this reflection is that you must be able to submit it electronically. And then I give them some examples of what you can do. So it could be a journal, a narrative, it could be with bullet points in things like Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. You might do concept maps, vidcasts, podcasts, and on and on and on. And I just try to get them to understand there are a variety of technologies. I just want to know what it is that you're thinking, but I want to know it in the way that you're thinking it. I'm not a natural writer. And if you ask me, Cliff, I want to know what it is that you know about X, give me 2 pages, you've greatly filtered what you're going to get from me. I can write, and I learned to do it, as all of us have to get the degrees that we have. I've learned to write. but it's not a natural process for me. It's a very slow process, and I always feel filtered. And at some point, if it drags on for too long, I'm just like, I do what we don't want our students to do, but I honestly think, what do I have to do to make a good showing and be done with this writing? And so, going back to that slide with the green that you couldn't read, think about the learner. I'm always thinking about the learner. I want to know what it is that they think about this particular unit. And if they prefer to write 2 pages, great, that option is there. But if they want to put together a photo essay or a variety of other things, a concept map, because that's the way I think. I visualize in concept maps. You know, if they want to do that, then they can turn it in. I always have the option, and I said interpretive dance earlier because I got an interpretive dance once. If you've noticed, University of Memphis, we're always in the finals for the cheerleading and the dance and all that stuff on ESPN. We have, you know, an entire program over there. So I had a student do an interpretive dance piece, and we were talking about the design and development process. And so she got one of the gyms there in the basketball courts in the old gym, and she had her camera set up, and she did it, and she did all this spinning and twirling and everything. And this was one of those things where she had to do a presentation, so she's showing it to a class of about 15 master's and doctoral students. So we're all sitting there, and you can tell from her face, this is important to her. It means something to her. And so that we were all trying our best to be a good audience, but when it was over, you could tell it just right over all our heads. Thankfully, she was prepared, and the thing she pulled up next was a diagram. And it had all these arrows going in a circle, and as soon as we saw it, we were like, oh, you know, she's talking about it's an iterative process. It just goes on and on and on. Design and development doesn't truly ever stop. Usually funding runs out or time runs out. But if you're going to do design and development right, it's iterative. And so all that spinning, as soon as we saw her diagram, she's like, voila. And that's when I realized I'm going to try to be comfortable being open-ended with people. If they understand, I have the right to follow up and go, I don't get it. Your concept map, your photo essay, can you call me? Can you come in? Can we discuss it? You know, you turned it in on time. I can see the effort was put into it. If I have to grade it based on what I can interpret from it, it's not going to be a good grade. I will give you the benefit of the doubt. Then we can sit down and talk. But just like she did, everyone that's done something that would kind of push the envelope, they've included a narrative, they've included an audio file that was 2 minutes long, they talked me through it. So that's really never been an issue. And so I found that if I'm willing to take a risk, they are too, but they usually want to be successful because they're grad students. And so they will take care of it, and they will, you know, they'll scaffold and help me understand what's going on. So I think that's something to consider.
Do you provide them feedback in any of these creative ways, like through
I
video?
do. Yeah. If you give me a dissertation, you're going to get audio files from me. It's quicker, and I'm going to talk about that more this afternoon. But you know, with my iPhone now, I've got 3 apps on there that I can record audio. And if you want me to write it and edit it, it's going to. Oh, you'll be lucky if I can do it in 3 days. It'll be a week or more usually. But if I can read it and go stop, you know, and just record for 30 seconds and say on page so-and-so, the second paragraph, look at this, you might want to consider blah, blah, blah. Stop, keep reading. And it's done. My iPhone will let me email 10 minutes at a time, and I rarely, even with dissertations, I rarely fill up 10 minutes. But I can't, I hate that I'm talking about myself, but I can't tell you how positively the students receive it. Because, you know, when you have to read the written word, you can read a lot into it, and you can think I'm mad or I'm aggravated. But if you get to hear my voice, I can say, think about doing this. Because that's what happens a lot of time in dissertation committees, in defenses. We don't say put this in there. We say go back and think about putting this in there. And as long as you think about it, that's all I ask. And so I think that comes across more clearly with the audio.
What apps do you use?
The voice memo that comes on the iPhone is great. AudioBoo, I'm going to show you that this afternoon, is another one. AudioBoo.fm. It's my favorite web-based app. Yeah, and it's on the table that you got.
Yeah, first page.
And then I do a lot of Skyping. We're a commuter school, just like UALR is. We're a commuter school. And see, I'm being filmed.
You want us to turn this off?
Yeah, we can hit pause or off.
We got enough
Yeah,
of you
hit
already.
pause for a moment.
They're gonna wonder, what did he say?
I want all of these guys.